All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Girl Power Alliance. Today, I have a very special guest. I am your host today, Sharissa, and we have Sharissa Sebastian. And I hope I said that right. And she is a certified leadership and executive coach. She has over 15 years of corporate leadership experience, in addition to coaching several Fortune 100 leaders and executives at companies like I'm sure you guys have heard of: Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, Bank of America, CNN, Advent Health, and the United Nations, which is just incredible. She's also a TEDx speaker and speaking coach. She's also a writer for Forbes and Huffington Post and a member of the Forbes Coaching Council. She has so many years' experience, and I love that she likes to draw strengths out of people and the value and have them become the best versions of themselves. So, Sharisha, welcome, and thank you so much for taking the time today.
Oh, you're welcome. It is an absolute pleasure to be here, guys. Thank you for that lovely warm welcome. I appreciate it.
You're so welcome. So, my biggest thing is you've been coaching people, higher ups, executives, men and women across the board for over 15 years. Is that something you thought you were always going to do? Like, what kind of started this coaching and this leadership thing? How did that start? Let's hear a little bit more juicy details about yourself.
Sure, happy to share. So actually, my 15-year career was mainly in corporate leadership. And then I got after that, once I was done with the corporate world and put that behind me, I went into coaching full time, and that I've been doing for almost 8 years. So there's a little bit of a difference. I did mentoring and leadership in the 15 years of my corporate career, and then moved into coaching full time. And so yeah, that's kind of been my journey. It's been a crazy, crazy faith walk. I'll put it that way. But at the end of my corporate career, I started to get really burnt out. There were a lot of things that just weren't working. And I just started to get really, really stressed. I was stretching myself way too thin, working long hours. And I actually found a coach around that time, and I had no idea what coaching was at all. And I actually found a coach, funny story, on Groupon of all places. And he wasn't
Groupon. Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
And that's actually what kicked off my coaching journey, because the words that he posted, he was like, oh, I read it and I thought, somehow he is talking to me and I need this help because I need to figure out where do I go from here. I don't see myself being able to sustain this. And I was a single mom, like I'm a single mom now. I was a single mom back then. And there was just no way I could see myself being able to be with my daughter and spend time with her while still having this really, really demanding career. So what I found during coaching is that one of the things I was really passionate about, I started to do less and less of in my corporate career, and that was the leadership aspect. I loved to be able to mentor people and lead them and bring out the best in them. But towards the end of my career, I started to get pulled more and more onto the business side of things, and I had less and less time to really invest in people. And so that was creating a lot of struggle and a lot of frustration for me. And so what happened was, through that transition, God so beautifully brought me this, kind of like the best of both worlds, where He gave me this opportunity to be able to step into a space that I really enjoyed and I had experience in, but it was completely different from the pressures and the stress that was associated with my corporate job. And so through coaching, I found leadership coaching, which uses my strengths. Like I love, like I'm all about servant leadership and those kinds of things. But also it helped me to focus so much more in like what I call my zone of genius, the things that I'm really gifted in. And it took me away from the things that just weren't working for me. And also it gave me a lot of freedom, is one of my biggest values. So it gave me a lot of freedom to create this business, and spend time with my daughter and travel and do all of these other things as well. But of course it hasn't been, as starting a business is never easy. So I don't want to paint this picture of like, oh, everything was just, fell into place, because it didn't. But there were lots of opportunities that the Lord had used to, and still uses today, to strengthen my faith. And so for those things, I am very grateful. So I don't know if that completely answers your question, but that's kind of been my journey up to this point.
I mean, I took a lot from that. So it's you had, that 8 year stretch, then you had the 15, then you had the corporate world, then, God allowed this opportunity for you to really, like you said, tap into that genius side of you. And I think that is one of the biggest things that, I push now as a newer entrepreneur, someone starting their own business, is you really have to do what you love. You really have to be passionate about it. And the saying, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. And I think that's so powerful on so many different levels because if you are being stressed out, like you said, you're not going to really enjoy. And I can tell that you just love pouring into people. So I just want to say thank you for that, because I'm sure you have really changed so many people's lives, changed the trajectory of where they could have been going, but where they're going now, and how, they're becoming this amazing self. And I heard you say you're a single mom, and that is incredible, because we know as moms and as women, we are just go getters. And as a single mom, I know you have to do so much. Um, with the coaching and the leadership, it's you're matching a lot of different people's energies, or you're matching people's, meeting them where they're at in their journey. And how do you prepare yourself for that? Like, let's say, I'm not sure if you do, maybe you can tell me if you do, big coaching classes and courses and stuff with multiple people. How do you prepare yourself?
Oh, that is such a good question. And there's so many things that pop into my head when I think about that. But the first thing I try to be, I'm not always perfect with this, but I try to be very intentional about always putting God first, no matter what happens, because I am a person that can very easily get into overwhelm. And I can get because I'm very empathetic, so I can be very much like, when a client is sharing something that they're going through that's really a struggle for them, it's very easy for me to identify so quickly with that. And really, like it does take a lot to be able to focus in that session and to be able to, give them the support that they need. So I can, it's easy for me if I don't align, if I don't pay attention to how I'm showing up and what I'm doing to prepare me for that, then I can easily get like really drained. It can be really challenging, especially if I'm in like back-to-back sessions all day long and I'm doing this at a script. So what I do at the beginning of my day, I've got this routine that really helps me to stay focused, to stay present, and to just recharge as I'm going through my day as well. So the first thing is just starting with gratitude in the morning and just asking, basically just thanking the Lord for another opportunity to be able to serve in whatever way that is, whether it's my clients or with anyone that He puts in my path for that day. But then also to ask Him to direct my steps and to give me, the wisdom that I need to be able to do this, because I fully recognize that I have zero ability to do what I do without Him, being present in each of those coaching sessions and leading me. And so I try to do that and be very intentional about always, like making sure that my focus is on Him first, and then just trusting that as I go through my day, that He's going to show up and help me to be able to serve in the way that He needs me to serve in the day. But also in terms of what I'm focusing on in the day, because I've got, I mean, as you know, like as a business owner, you've got especially like as a coach, if you have a service-based business, you've got the service part of your business, but you also have like the business building side of your business, right? So there's so many things that we as business owners or entrepreneurs juggle at the same time. And so the part that can be overwhelming for me is focusing on the business building side of things. And like there's so many ways, right? We can go about building our business and doing those things. So I try to be really intentional every morning by saying, okay, Lord, just tell me the thing that I need to focus on today, and not making this big grand plan, because I know I can get into overwhelm with that. And it's very easy for me to slip into this mindset of, oh my gosh, it's like 20 things on my list and I haven't, it's been a week and I haven't gotten to any of this stuff and that kind of thing. So I try to focus, like really be specific about prioritizing like 2 or 3 things a day, sometimes even in a week, like the top 2 or 3 things that I absolutely have to get done. But just leading or letting the Lord lead me to say, okay, these are the things that I need to do today. And a lot of times it's so simple, like it's simple things. It's like, talk about this today, or like go live and talk about, it's like very little things. But those are the things that He uses to make the biggest difference. So I try as much as possible to, not always easy, to get out of my head and to just align first before I even jump into, oh, here's my to-do list and I've got all of these things to do. A couple of other things I do is I spend time in meditation and devotion. So in addition to the prayer time, is just being still and just, allowing God to kind of pull me and pour into me and speak to me however, He wants to do that for the day. And then I do like a morning exercise routine. So I do my yoga in the morning, which also helps me to focus. It helps get my body moving. So by the time I start my day, if I'm able to get through all of that, I just feel so much better. And then I also spend about 15 minutes to a half hour doing reading. I usually will read like one Christian book and then one book on leadership or psychology or something that relates to my business. And so I like to I feel like that's my filling up time in the morning. And I do this all within about an hour, sometimes a little less than an hour. And so if I don't do that, if I don't have that like power hour in the morning, oh my goodness, forget it. My day is like, it's easy for me to get stressed and
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
but
I love that. I love that. I love that you're structured in that because I think as leaders and as women, we need that me time to really talk to God,
yes,
get those downloads for him. And I love how you say, you have God lead you because I'm sure you've had it where you're like, okay, and you're praying and you're like, okay, God, this is, lead me, guide me. And he may lead you in a completely different direction than you thought you were going to go.
that's right.
And I think that's just so incredible. And depending on who you're with, and you could be like, oh, this was for that person in this moment, and you get into that groove. And I love that. And it's all about, especially with serving people, I really like to see when people light up, and I'm sure you do too, and you can see when, that spirit just awakens and you're like, I got it. It made sense to them. This is for them. This message is for them. This teaching is for them in all of those different aspects. And I love how you take that time for yourself, whatever that may look like. Otherwise, you do go into overwhelm. And you talked about your journey not being obviously easy because it never is easy. And I kind of want to dig into that a little bit and some of the things that you had to overcome and how God fit into that for you and for others to where you are today.
Absolutely. So there's, oh my goodness, I can't even begin to tell you all the things, right? Like all those
Short
moments.
short version is fine. You could pick a moment that you want to talk about. That's fine.
So we'll go with the short version. So let's see. So when I started this journey, it really started with just prayer, with me like getting on my knees because I was at the point where I was so burnt out. I was so just done and I couldn't see a way forward at all. And so I had to go to God and say, like, Lord, please, like this, I do not see a way forward. Like you've got to help, you've got to intervene here because there's nothing more that I can do. I'm like at the end of myself. And so through that journey, and of course that's I won't I'll spare you the details of that story, but that was kind of what led me into the coaching space. And then from that point, interestingly enough, when I felt so strongly that that's what I was called to do, in my head I had this rosy picture of like, surely, like if God is telling me that this is what I need to do, it'll be fine, like it'll all work, it's all going to be great, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I knew there were going to be some challenges across the learning curve for me because I had no background in business, no background in sales, no background in marketing, none of my background was all in tech. And so I knew that I had a learning curve, but I did not expect the challenges as far as like just providing, like for the income to come in and all of those things. So there were many, many times where even though I was, getting confirmation time after time that I'm on the right path, that didn't mean that all of a sudden, like my business just took off and it was a success. I had to do a lot of experimenting early on because it was a lot of areas that I just wasn't familiar with. But God was so good to provide me the right people, the right resources, the right support, even when I had like nothing. Like I didn't have, a lot of money or finances to invest in my business. There would be people that came along or resources or something that, that helped me to just take those baby steps, one step at a time forward. And so, when I talk about like there were a lot of bumps in the road, there were times where there were like a few months. In fact, it took me about quite a few months before I even got my very first client. Like I was speaking to so many people, trying to figure the sales thing out, trying to figure out, okay, what do I need to do? And so I remember the big celebration with that very first client. It was like, oh my, I never thought it would take months to get my first client, but that's what happened.
Yeah.
But God was so, faithful to provide along the way. Not the way I thought it was going to happen, but at the same time, I can see now looking back that I needed to really trust in Him and put my faith in Him, so that so that the business was really just rooted in my calling, or what I believe is my calling for right now. So that's kind of the journey. And there were a lot of times when I didn't know if this business was going to survive even another month, like from a financial perspective. There were a lot of months where I wouldn't have any clients and I'd be like, oh my goodness, Lord, like where do I need to go? What do I need to do? But even in those moments where it seemed to not be working out, there were still things that He planted in me to grow the business. So He was like, okay, so work on this. Because He would give me these quiet periods where I needed to build that foundation of the business so that, when it was time for people to come in, I was ready for it. So and now that I look back at it, I can recognize those times, even when I thought things were not working, He was actually preparing me for what was to come, and I wouldn't have been able to step into those opportunities had I not gone through those times. So So even all of those opportunities that you mentioned earlier that am so like grateful to have had, like the TEDx opportunities, the
Yeah.
Forbes opportunities, that was all like God planted those seeds in my mind to say, start writing. Like
Yeah,
my
he's preparing you. He's preparing you for all these great things that are going to happen. So when that
right.
blessing comes, it's like, oh, I'm so prepared. I've done all of the work and now I can just really fulfill what I need to do.
Yeah, so that's exactly right. I love the way you said that because it was all preparation. So even though I see it, I say there was struggles along the way, but really to reframe that, it's more just the preparation. That's what it was. It wasn't easy, but now that I look back at it, I can see how every single one of those, those struggles along the way have led to opportunities. Yeah, so it's been incredible. Not easy, but incredible. And
Yeah, that's really amazing. I got so many downloads when you said that from God because I'm kind of in that season as well. Like I said, I have been a newer entrepreneur of starting a business and being a co-founder here at Girl Power Alliance. And these are things I never thought that I would do. And for the longest time, I worked in corporate America. So it was all of those tools, all of those things that I learned from all the different managers and owners and people skills and talking to people and showing compassion. All of those things were preparing me for now because now people can ask me and be like, "Oh, well, how do you talk to people? And how do you?" And it's like, I've been doing this for years. Well, how do you do admin work? I've been doing this for years. So it's that preparation. And to get to that preparation, it is a struggle and it is difficult. And I'm sure in those moments, you were like, oh my gosh, like you said, you didn't book your first client for the first couple of months that you started it. But you were able to prepare so that when you did get that first client, you were ready, you were
yeah,
so ready. And you might have not been 100% ready because it was so new, but
right.
now, I mean, you're so ready. And with
Mhm.
everything that's been going on in the last year, I don't even want to say the name of it because I feel like we talk to every person on our podcast about it. But has that affected you or do you think it's actually catapulted
Mhm.
your coaching and leadership business?
Yeah. And what's so interesting, Paris, is I never in a million years would have guessed that last year would have been the biggest year of growth for my business, which was like,
That's what amen. And that's it. That's exactly, and I'm the same way.
yeah,
I lost my job. I lost my job as soon as it started, and I look back a year later and I'm like, that was the best. That
oh,
was the best. And I know it was bad for certain people, but we and we've talked about this before and it's God really wanted that time for everyone to stop and just be
mhm,
in that moment and really be like, okay, now you have this moment to do what you're meant to do. And I love that. So I love hearing that. I love that it was your best year. I just, it makes me smile because I know that's so fulfilling for you. And I know you are so grateful to God and you're just like, thank you. Like I'm here, I'm doing it and I'm making it happen. Um, is there anything that you're kind of highly focused on now moving forward with your business?
yes. Well, a couple of different things. One is as I'm trying to expand my business, and I'm actually in this really exciting, even though it's a little bit scary, but also very exciting phase of my business where I'm starting to build my team out a little bit more and taking more of those faith steps. So as I do that, and I'm expanding my business and looking at getting more coaches in to help me out, and then also strategically planning for how I want to provide services and looking into serving through different companies, through government agencies. So everything is like just building right now, which is such an exciting period to be in. So that's kind of where I am right now and just trusting that God is going to lead me. But I feel like one of the things, and actually Michelle, I talked with her about it. She was the one that planted this in my mind and I didn't even in my heart and I didn't realize that. And now when she said it, I was like, oh, it makes so much sense because now I see how it is building towards it. So one of the things I think she mentioned to me was, and let me see if I can get this right. She talked about like me training other people to do what I do. And I was like,
Yes.
oh, yeah, well, obviously that makes so much sense, but I needed somebody to just say it to me. And now that she did,
Yeah, like
um,
that message was for you. It was like, okay, hey, we get messages from other people sometimes. And that's God using other people being like, hey, you may be in a point where you're like, I'm growing, but I'm not really sure where we're going. And I'm just kind of going on faith. And that's it, is you get to now teach people to do what you do, which then gives you more freedom, which you love, and keeps you good, because overwhelm is a real thing. And so I love that.
Yes, and it was literally in like 30 seconds. She said something, and it just like I was just like, oh my goodness, I am blown away. That is so simple, exactly what I needed to hear. And now I can see how all the pieces are kind of moving in that direction. So, yeah, so I'm in this period of expanding, but my focus is still primarily on supporting women who are in corporate leadership. Because I think even like from my own experience, I know the struggles, so like so much of what my clients go through is what I've lived through. And I've done a lot of work to kind of work through those things when I was in the corporate world. So I have a
Hmm.
good sense, even through my clients, of like what works and what doesn't. And so what I've done now is created like a coaching program around that, where I'm taking all of that, everything that I've learned, everything that I've studied over the years and all of that stuff, and put it into like a really like an 8 week program, basically, where I'm
Hmm.
walking the clients through that, where they still get coaching support, but they also get the teaching aspect of it, and networking and all of that kind of stuff. So that's
Yeah.
my focus right now, is doing that, but also expanding into other avenues like government contracting and working with. I do work with 3 different companies right now,
Hmm.
and so I'm looking at expanding into different areas. So of course, when Michelle said that, I was like, yeah, I'm going to need help. There's no way I can do this
Yeah.
by myself.
Yeah.
I'm going to have
Yeah.
to have other people, not just coaches, but other people on my team to be able to support all of that. So it's
Yeah.
exciting. I don't know what's coming. These are all just in the planning phases. But so I'm excited to see what God does from here.
Yeah, and it's sometimes the shift can be so dramatic too. It's like you could be working on one thing and it's shifting to something else. So I love that. And what is having faith in business? It's something we are huge about in Girl Power Alliance, and I'm sure that's why Michelle chose you to be one of our guests. And I'm so excited. She was like, "Hey, do you want to record with her?" I was like, "Yes, of course." Like, I love that leadership. Amazing. Let's go. And it's what have you found that with faith in business? And I don't necessarily think that it would be a struggle, but is it something that the people that come to you, do they know that faith is really where you stem from? Is that something that you talk about in your coaching? Is that how you possibly help, when you mentor other people? Is that definitely a high focus for you?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So in my private coaching business, like everything that I teach and train are based on biblical principles. So when I teach from that perspective, I share from my own experience, and I speak about it in terms of like, this is why I believe what I believe. For me, it's a faith journey. It's this is what I know to work, and I kind of like back it up and teach through that lens. But when I'm working with companies, of course, a lot harder, because I can't really, I'm not supposed to be speaking from a faith perspective. And so that's what's a bigger struggle for me. So I really want to, I have to be careful on that side of things, especially when I'm doing one-on-one coaching, because I can't necessarily lead with faith. However, what I do is, if there's an opportunity, I'm always like asking God for opportunities to share from that perspective, because that is really where it comes from. And so when people say, and this is so bizarre to me, that I have some clients who tell me that, kind of like, oh, one of my clients said that I'm like Jiminy Cricket to her. And I was like, Jiminy Cricket? What does he mean? And she
Yeah.
said, you're like my conscience. Like, I always, when I, in a meeting or having a conversation with someone, I think about like, what would Sharissa do? It's like, oh my goodness, that is, wow. But the reason I bring that up is because I so much want to share, like, with every opportunity that I have, to say it's not me. Like, this is not, this is not my
Yeah.
way,
Yeah.
but it's really based on biblical principles that we know, right? We know that work.
Hmm.
But I am a little bit more restricted when it comes to the corporate side of things. But at the
Right.
same time, I really feel like God is not, because I prayed so much about this at the beginning of my business, to say, Lord, if you want me to support like Christian women, because of course that's my heart.
Hmm. Yeah.
And very clearly it was like, nope, no, that's not, you're gonna lead people to me through the people that you serve, and they're not necessarily all going to be Christian. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I had to kind of work through that and just trust the Holy Spirit in every single. And they have been opportunities where I've had the opportunity to pray with my clients. If they
Yeah.
mention, if there's like a little, if I sense that they're comfortable with me going there, then
Right.
I if there's opportunities for me to pray, I absolutely will say to them. If they're struggling with something at the end of a session, I'll say, I will be praying for you for that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. So
And that,
I
yeah, I think that's an amazing gift because corporate America, it's hard. I get that. You can't just go out there and say, "Hey, I'm a Christian leadership coach that has all these years of experience and all this success," because those bigger companies would be like, "Well, we may have, other religions or people that aren't religious and you don't want to do that." But I think what you're doing by changing that narrative is that because of how you coach and because of how you lead and mentor is you use those principles whether they know it or not. And I think that's the biggest thing is getting it out there whether or not they know it. And it's something that it activates their spirit whether they know it or not. And that's a really amazing gift, and I love that you do that. And I know that if that you're going to be very very successful. You're already successful, but you're going to be even more successful even if you didn't have corporate, you didn't have the bigger companies, if you didn't have those people, you're still going to be so successful in helping people and really leading it with faith if you decided to do that. Obviously getting corporate companies and things like that, it's great, it definitely gets your name out there, but I think that's just the start of it all for you. And I'm so excited. Um, is there one thing or maybe two that you could share with people that are listening, people that are watching on YouTube, um, something from your mentorship or leadership that you tell your clients and your people that they can do tangible every day, or just a piece of advice that you have used that you're like, you know what, no matter what, do this. I would love to hear it so that I could say, what would Sharissa say? I would love that.
I want to make that a thing, but I will share this, and it's so simple, and it's really what I do every day, what I try to do, what I aspire to do every day, and this is the only thing that I believe that allows me to do what I do and to actually have peace about it, and that is simply to put God first every time, like walk closely with Him. Ask him the questions, ask him to help with the decisions, ask him to give you the desires of his heart so that as you are walking in this, you know that you are not alone. And so that sense of peace that I have and calm, and even when I mess up, I know there's going to be times where I'm not going to make the right decisions or something's going to go wrong or whatever the case is. But I feel like as long as I know that he's got it and this is his business first and not my own, it's going to be okay. It's going to turn out okay. But I do need to keep that focus on him first and not the success of the business. The minute I switch, and I've done this in my journey before, I've been so fixated on like, oh, I got to make this work.
Hmm.
The minute I start to get derailed and focus more on the business success than I'm focused on, like aligning with him, that's when things go off the tracks and I start to get overwhelmed and stressed and frustrated. And then just from a coaching perspective, it really boils down to one word. And if you ask my clients, they'll probably will say this. I just kind of teach them to care for people. I mean, it sounds so
Mm,
simple and so like, but really
yeah,
just care and not get too much in their head about what's going on. And, because it's very easy for us to make up stories and interpret things a certain way. It's just
yeah,
love on people, just care for them. Because when you care for people, I mean, amazing things happen. One of my favorite quotes is, I think it's Maya Angelou's quote, that says that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And so a lot of my coaching
mm,
is kind of the basis for it. It's just if you care for people deeply and you will go do anything. And that's part of servant leadership, right? It's just putting people first
yeah.
and supporting them. And so, yeah, I
Oh,
know that was I cheated, but it's
no, I love that so much because you have both sides. It's put God first, and if all else fails, just care for people. And that just goes hand in hand with God because God tells us to love everybody. And that's the biggest thing is caring for people, but really intentionally caring for them. Not
that's right.
just saying, "Oh yeah, I care about this person," but really being present, listening, learning, not assuming. I know a lot of us, and I'm sure, we could go on a whole session. Just yesterday assumed because I hadn't heard from one person, I assumed they were upset. And I got into my head and I had all these ideas. And then I stepped back and I said, wait a second, just stop it.
Mm,
And I ended up seeing that person and they're like, hey. And I was like, I was all in my head. And I think that's the thing. As long as you care, don't get overwhelmed. You don't get into your head. And Sharissa, it has been such a pleasure. I know that you're going to do incredible things. You already are. And what you're doing matters. Your voice matters. You matter. Your work matters, and it's just so incredible. I loved talking with you today, and I'm sure we're going to hear more from you. I'm sure we'll have you on again. I don't know if it's something that you're going to collaborate with us, possibly. We would love that, just because of all of that juicy information that you have in there. I would just love it. And I wish nothing but blessings and abundance and success for you, and thank you so much for coming on the Girl Power Alliance podcast today.
Oh, you are so welcome. This has been such a pleasure, and you are an absolute blessing, guys. Thank you so much for all you do and all Girl Power Alliance does, because this has been, just incredible just to learn more about the mission, and all the work I know there's so much hard work that goes into what you do. So appreciate it. Love seeing all your posts, and thank you for the opportunity.
And you guys, we will have all of Sharissa Sebastian's information in the show notes. So if you want to get some coaching from her and some leadership from her, connect with her. All of that will be in there as well. And thank you so much. We'll see you guys next time.